Hello, my dear audience. In this episode, we're going to visit one of the most unusual homes of all time. The Ennis residence is gigantic in size, full of strange details, and entirely made of concrete blocks. Built high on a hillside and overlooking the city, it has the appearance of a mysterious and impregnable fortress. North from Los Angeles is the neighborhood of Los Feliz. Here is the Ennis House, situated not far from the Griffith Observatory and placed almost at the highest point of the hill. From below the street, the colossal structure towers high above your head, giving the house an exciting and impressive appearance. We follow the curve of the road and go towards the north side. From here, the home is still above street level, but soon the road climbs to a level that is higher than the house itself. The property is enclosed by high walls, and the entrance has a wrought iron gate. There's also a smaller gate at the left, but of course we prefer to step inside through the main entrance. Behind the gate is a large open terrace that provides an amazing view over the landscape. The residence consists of two separated buildings. At the right is a garage with staff quarters, while the main house is at the left. The combination of the climbing road, entry gate, terrace and enormous facade makes it more look like a palace than an actual home. But what was the inspiration for such a strange design? Till the 1920s, most American houses were inspired by European architectural movements. Frank Lloyd Wright, however, believed that American architects should not copy the classic European designs. Instead of this, American architecture should have its own unique appearance. Frank Lloyd Wright wanted to create a whole new architecture movement, and in his quest for inspiration, he discovered the buildings by Mayans and Aztecs. Besides the Native American influences, Wright also took inspiration from ancient Egypt, making the Ennis House a combination between an Egyptian temple and a Mayan pyramid. A unique structure that bears no similarity with any other European design. Wright called this movement Mayan Revival Architecture, and he also designed the Hollyhock House and the D.W. German House in a similar style. This style that is both futuristic, historic and exotic makes it a perfect film location, and over the years dozens of movies were shot in the house, like Day of the Locust, House on Haunted Hill, Game of Thrones, and most famously Blade Runner. However, this film was never shot inside, and the interior that was recreated on a soundstage bears little resemblance with the original home. So let's take a look at the floor plan, how the interior of the real Ennis House looks like. With a total of 6,000 square feet of living space, this is one of the largest designs by Frank Lloyd Wright. We color the parts of the first floor level that are inside, and we name the function of the different rooms. The first thing you immediately notice is that the first floor is considerably smaller than the second. The difference in size is explained in this cross-section, seen from the north. Because the hillside climbs from west to east, the first floor level is much smaller than the second, with a large part of the second floor level placed directly on the ground of the hillside. It's also important to mention that a large part of the structure is just a retaining wall. This wall is created to prevent landslides, and because it's made of the same materials as the rest of the house, the residence appears to be even larger than it already is. From the terrace we walk towards the front door, which has beautiful wrought iron decorations, designed by Frank Lloyd Wright himself. Even the door handle and the doorbell have similar decorative patterns. We open the front door and step in the hallway. Next to the entrance is a small desk. And the front door is reflected in a mirror at the opposite side. There is also a wardrobe and utility space. We skip the billiard room and come back to it later in this video. For now we go over the stair towards the second floor level. The hallway has a low-hanging ceiling, and this was done deliberately because it creates a very confined space that disappears once you climb over the stair towards the upper hallway, with a very high ceiling, giving every visitor an exciting feeling of suppression followed up by expansion. The feeling of graciousness is further enlarged by the church-like stained glass windows that fill the large space with diffuse light. We change the drawing of the first floor into the plan of the second floor. We place the furniture in the drawing and name the functions of the separated spaces. We see that the dining, living and hallway are placed in one large open space. We can also see that there is a height difference in the second floor, with the kitchen, dining and guest bedroom placed 1 yard higher than the rest of the living space. This elevation was created by placing a part of the second floor level on top of the first one and by placing another part on the ground, which was lower than the ceiling of the first floor level. The higher part is accessible over 2 stairs, and over one of these stairs we go to the left and we enter the dining area that looks like the knight's hall of a medieval castle. You can eat your dinner here while overlooking the skyline, giving you the feeling of being a king that owns the city of Los Angeles. The large open spaces and high ceilings make the Ennis House very unusual for Frank Lloyd Wright, because most other designs by Wright are known for their confined spaces. Here we see a typical trademark by Frank Lloyd Wright, the frameless window in the corner. By placing 2 glass plates in the corner without a frame in the joint, the corner of the room opens towards the landscape. This enlarges the feeling of space, removing the verge between inside and outside. The dining room has 2 of these corners. From both corners you can't see any light reflection on the glass, making the windows look like open spaces. Above the fireplace is a bronze plaque of Tohil, the Mayan god of fire, which is a clear reference to the Native American inspiration of the house. Near the dining area are a few pillars, made from the same blocks that are everywhere in the house. On these blocks you can see a unique pattern. What are these blocks and how is this house made? It's time to explain the construction. The Mayans built their houses in a style called Puuc architecture. This style is known for symmetry, stapled blocks and extensive decorative patterns. Wright wanted to imitate the Puuc style, but the Mayans carved their blocks from rock stones, which was a very time-consuming process. Therefore, Wright developed a construction process that was much faster and more economic. Wet concrete was put in wooden molds. In the bottom of these molds was a decoration, which created a relief in the concrete. These blocks, which looked more like sidewalk tiles, were 16 by 16 inch in size and 3.5 inches thick. U-shaped grooves were in all 4 sides of the blocks, and in the back was a recess. Not every block by the Ennis House had the famous pattern. On this photo you see that some blocks had a smooth surface. The blocks were placed vertically opposite each other, while resting against steel rods that were placed vertically and horizontally in the grooves of the tiles. For extra strength, U-shaped rods were placed over the horizontal parts. This process was repeated over and over again, creating two walls of concrete blocks with a maze of steel rods in the grooves and a hollow space between the walls. When the U-shaped grooves of two blocks come together, they form a hollow tube with steel rods in it. Each tube was filled in with cement. This was done on every side of the blocks, creating a strong masonry-like connection. Each steel rod was the length of two blocks, but because it was placed halfway, it supported one complete and two half blocks. The obvious question is why you should choose for such a complicated construction technique and not just for entire walls of concrete. The answer is that there were hardly any construction vehicles or machines in 1924, and the textile blocks could be easily carried by a single construction worker. An entire wall could be stapled block by block without the help of construction machines. The casting of the blocks was also done on the location, using the sand and stone from the excavated hillside for the concrete, limiting transportation costs. It's almost unbelievable, but this house was completely handmade, using a staggering total of 27,000 blocks. And despite its enormous scale, it was still relatively cheap to construct. Frank Lloyd Wright called this building technique the textile block system, and he also constructed the Storer House, Freeman House and Billiard House with a similar building method. Wright wanted that every design by him was unique, so he gave each of the textile block houses a distinctive pattern on the blocks, making them instantly recognizable. The name textile block is derived from the construction of textile. During the process of weaving, first a grid of wires is knotted, and this grid is enclosed by thicker wires. A process which is somewhat similar with the enclosement of the steel frame by blocks. I've made a vertical cross-section seen from the east side to show you the construction process. The first step was the placing of the retaining walls, also made from textile blocks. Then the main walls were erected. To reduce the weight at the higher part of the wall, some blocks that were placed higher had open spaces in them. These open spaces were only in the blocks at the exterior side of the wall, not at the interior side. Most walls were erected vertical, but some walls were placed slightly diagonal, giving some parts of the house a trapezoidal shape. At the trapezoidal parts, the blocks at the corner were cut off diagonal and became increasingly smaller with each row towards the top. The other walls were placed against the diagonal parts and therefore leaning backwards, creating the trapezoidal shape. For extra support, two rows of columns were placed in the middle. These columns are standing over the entire length of the house, from west to east. The columns were made of two staples of concrete blocks, connected together with steel bolts and cement. Because the blocks were only a half part, they could be easily carried by two construction workers. The walls and columns support a wooden roof. Because there is no lowered ceiling, the roof beams are visible inside. This was the final step in the construction process, and the house was finished. We continue our walkthrough and go down over the stair in the dining room. From there we go left around the corner and return in the hallway. We climb up the other stair, but now we go to the right. Here you see the other side of the iron room divider. The houses by Frank Lloyd Wright are notorious for their small kitchens, but the Ennis House is a major exception, with a large, bright kitchen. Here is the second kitchen that is also a pantry. This second kitchen was needed when a party was held in the house and many guests had to be provided with extra meals. This is the only guest bedroom of the house. It has a small window that looks out over the south side and a large window that looks out over the terrace at the west side. We return to the dining area and we see that there is an internal balcony that overlooks the lower placed sitting area. Because you need to descend over a stair to enter the sitting area, it feels like a different room, despite having any internal walls. The same room looks different from every angle. The interlinking of the different spaces gives you the feeling of being lost in a cave. While being in one space, it's difficult to get an orientation where the other space will end, creating an organic and mysterious atmosphere. Behind the row of columns is another huge fireplace, decorated with a beautiful Art Nouveau style mosaic. The living room has glass doors from where you can step on the balcony on the south side, overlooking downtown LA. The interior is transparent and filled with sunlight, which forms a surprising contrast with the exterior that feels massive, blocky and enclosed. This glass door provides access to the library. In the middle is a set of furniture designed by Frank Lloyd Wright himself. In the 1920s, it was common for rich couples to sleep in separated bedrooms, so originally this space was a second bedroom used by Mrs. Ennis, explaining why there is a bathroom next to the library. The bathroom has a sunken bathtub and there is a window. This window does not open to the outside, but opens into the hallway. Like the other rooms, the library has beautiful stained glass windows. These windows are, like many other details in the house, influenced by the Art Deco movement. Combining Native American influence with the Art Deco and Art Nouveau style was not unusual in the 1920s, because many designers from that period took inspiration from ancient civilizations. The library has wood and glass panels that are placed in spaces between the columns. The panels can be removed, so the entire library can be opened towards the colonnade. This door opens towards a Japanese-style garden with a pond. The garden is placed on a rectilinear terrace, confined by the retaining walls on the edge of the hillside. From the garden we step in the bedroom. Here is another frameless window in the corner, similar to the two windows in the dining room. The bedroom is accessible from the inside through a loggia that results from a corridor that runs over the entire length of the house from west to east. I think the colonnade is the most beautiful part of the house, with a perspective that looks endless and a palace-like grandeur, forming the backbone of the floor plan. Can you imagine yourself walking towards your bedroom through a colonnade with sunlight, with a pool at your left and your garden at your right hand? Here you can see the loggia from the opposite direction. At the far end of the colonnade is the entrance towards the master bedroom. This room belonged originally to Mr. Ennis, and it even had its own fireplace. At the end is a glass door, and behind it is a balcony. This balcony is not free-floating and it is entirely resting on a carved-out part of the hillside that is covered with retaining walls. The master bedroom has a unique-looking bathroom, completely in Art Deco style, with red and black tiles and a sunken bathtub. Each glass door of the loggia can swing open towards the swimming pool. The pool is located next to the street and the balustrade is only 1 yard high, but because it's placed on a much higher part of the hillside and the street is lower, you still cannot look from the street into the pool area. It's important to mention that the pool was not an original part of the design. It was only added later in 1940. The chimneys are constructed in a very unique way. At the lowest point, massive concrete blocks were placed. Then a row of textile block walls was placed on top of it. The more closer to the fire, the higher the walls, forming pyramid-like structures. This door opens towards the hallway on a second floor, making it possible to bring food and drinks from the kitchen to the swimming pool in just a few seconds. Here is a small entry gate in the pool area. Behind it is a stair that goes down over the hillside. The stair goes around the balcony and leads to a small terrace. The terrace forms the lowest point of the house, placed almost at the foot of the retaining wall. Because the concrete was made with sand and stones from the ground on the location, the blocks have the same color as the hillside. Matching the colors with the landscape is one of the trademarks of organic architecture. Here you see a stair from where you can walk on the hillside and leave the house. But instead of this, we climb back up over another stair. And this brings us at a terrace which is in line with the first floor level. From here is another small stair that leads to the Japanese garden on the second floor level. But we don't return to this garden and follow the pathway on a terrace towards the west side. The multiple stairs and terraces are reminiscent of the agricultural terraces by the Incas, which is another pre-Columbian influence. Over the ridge we walk from the east to the west. Here is a small space, like a porch, placed under the dining room, with two open doors on both sides. The porch has a small balcony. Under the porch are also the glass doors that provide access to the billiard room. Just like the swimming pool, the billiard room is not original and was later added in 1940. It has also a cocktail bar and a fireplace. From the billiard room we return to the hallway and our walkthrough has become full circle. A common criticism of Ennis House is that it is way too large, while having only a few bedrooms. I think, however, that this criticism is unjustly, because the house was never intended as a family home. The Ennis couple had already full-grown children and they wanted the house specific for hosting parties. The large terrace could be used for outdoor parties. In the dining room, large dinners were organized, and there were 2 kitchens to prepare all the meals. When you keep that in mind, the large spaces combined with a few bedrooms become quite logical. On the other hand, a second common criticism is very justified. The house is a horror to maintain. Namely, in 1924, the techniques of mixing concrete were not as well developed as it is today. Already during the construction process, the lower blocks started to crack under the weight. And over the years, air pollution and rain caused the concrete blocks to be worn out completely. The biggest threat, however, was erosion of the hillside underneath. Not only was the ground washed away by rainwater, also the 1994 Northridge earthquake caused large cracks in the retaining wall. This created a serious danger that the house would collapse if no action was taken quickly. For many years, these steel beams were placed in front to prevent the walls from falling apart. After many years of disrepair, it was finally billionaire Ron Burkle who bought the house in 2011 and who saved it by doing a $50 million renovation. This preserved it for the future, but still today the blocks need to be often replaced or renovated. From the terrace we walk over this stair that leads to the higher pool area. From the pool area you can walk over a balcony. This balcony leads to the glass doors of the kitchen. Now we walk over the bridge that connects the main house to the staff quarters. This bridge goes over the entry gate. At the end you can step from the bridge onto the balcony of the staff quarters. These 4 windows belong to 4 identical bedrooms, connected with a corridor at the rear and a bathroom at the end. The servants even had a small living room with a kitchen downstairs. In the 1920s and 30s, it was common for rich people to have servants who lived full-time at home. Next to the servants' living room is the garage. The final part of the walkthrough is the upper garden, placed right from the bridge. Due to the rise of the hillside, the garden is the highest part of the house. Therefore, you need to climb up a few steps to enter the garden. It has a pond and a sitting area placed in the shade of a large tree. This tree is standing outside the wall of the garden, located in the bend of the road. I made a series of drawings showing the exterior from all directions, while highlighting the different parts of the interior with different colors. This illustrates that each separated part of the floor plan asserts itself as an individual factor in the whole exterior. This means that every room inside forms a block on the outside, and all these blocks combined together form the shape of the house. By looking at the exterior, you can recognize each room at the inside. All the trapezes, blocks and rectangles that point in various directions give the house a complex and intriguing abstract appearance. The Ennis residence is not everybody's dream home, and it's considered by many as impractical and not cozy to live in. But I think it is more an experiment to create something new in architecture. It's a sculpture, an iconic image of the city of Los Angeles. It's a monument of true American architecture.